Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back from the break. I am moderator, joined by Apotheny. Today we've got Northern Coalition versus Razer, Northern Coalition red against Razer and blue. Northern Coalition going for that battlecruiser core that we've seen used a lot, but bringing two additional Harbingers on top, along with the Vexer, Malediction, and Daredevil. Apotheny, walk us through Razer.
Okay, so for Razer, we have a very top-heavy team. It's a Balgorn with two Vindys and Eos down through two Magus for Lynx, two Daredevils, and two Punishers. One of the Magus of Norheim already taking a lot of damage here from the MBCs. I wonder if he's going to be able to catch reps.
Yeah, having no tracking disruptors onto those BCs will mean that they're able to apply excellent damage across the arena. We can see some artillery and beam volleys getting on top of the Daredevil. Now the Punisher of Lars. Lars has now dropped excellent damage being applied, and Razer not having any attack bar to respond to Northern Coalition's volley.
Yeah, I mean, NC Dot here really taking advantage of the fact that those Oneirus reps land at the end of the cycle. So even if they're pre-locked, you've got to wait for that cycle to happen to land on those very fragile frigates. We've now got a Magus. Ooh, Magus going down as well. Those can be very tanky. That's a bunch of links. That is a nice pickup there for the NC Dot team.
Yeah, that Mega streaming across its field to try to get tackle on things, but not even being locked by his Oneirus. He was deleted off the field, and now Aided is being target painted and down to Hull. If he doesn't get reps soon, he's going to drop, and just now getting reps, but the cycle will probably, and does now finally kill him.
Yeah, it really feels like Northern Coalition are surgically picking apart the Razer Alliance team. With those two Fleet Canes, that's a lot of Alpha combined with the Navy Brutices and the Harbs as well. Very easy for them to pick off these short ships, these smaller ships, with nothing really stopping them. Now it looks like we've got damage actually going on to the Oneirus, maybe. No, Thorn Knight in the Magus. Actually looks like it's a little bit of split damage.
Yeah, the Oneirus is right on, the NC Dot Oneirus is right on top of his battlecruiser core, now pulling range to get away from the Razer side, but the Razer side, for their effort, is gotten their Oneirus tackled, painted, and webbed. NC Dot, last year's 4th place team, showing exactly why they were in such a commanding position last year, now dropping the Oneirus of Hope Lawson.
Yeah, I mean, NC Dot had taken absolutely zero damage so far until the Oneirus just lost their shields. That's it so far, and already half the Razer Alliance teams going here. Like, this is a clear evidence of a mismatch of skill. I mean, Razer against one of the lesser teams perhaps would have been able to show us something, but they're being absolutely demolished by one of the top teams from last year, showing themselves to again be one of the top teams this year. Thankfully, we will be seeing Razer Alliance again in the losers bracket. They're not gone completely, so they may have a chance to show us something a little bit more, show us that they are, you know, worthy one of the spots in this tournament in their matches in the losers bracket.
Yeah, NC Dot is just surgically putting a target painter onto the primary, and cycling the volleys from all of their long-range battlecruiser cores, and just deleting these ships off of the field. Razer having absolutely nothing to respond with, as Northern Coalition's paint hasn't even been scratched right now. Both Vindicators being locked down by this core, and Guy DeBane already being into half armor.
Okay, well, it does look like it is lights out here for Razer. You know, they bought a comp that's certainly very interesting, very top-heavy. I love the use of command destroyers. I really hope we're going to see more of them. I think they're going to be really good this year, especially the armor ones with the addition of T2 drones. But unfortunately, you know, not enough against such an opponent as Northern Coalition.
Yeah, I really like this comp that Northern Coalition has brought. They don't have any sort of battleship newts, they don't have any sort of smart bombs, but what they do have is they have 6 links and 6 ships that project up excellent damage, augmented by the cheap Vexer, the Malediction, which can get fast tackle, and the Daredevil. It's a really balanced core, even though it looks like it's very battlecruiser heavy. And speaking of things it's heavy on damage, which Ranger Argus is now feeling as he's in half armor.
Okay, well, he is finally going down. The last of the battleships falling. It's really nice to be able to come on and do a little bit of commentary rather than hosting mod. How have you been enjoying the matches so far today?
Oh, it's been absolutely exciting. I mean, Even T's been great so far. The matches have been good. We've got our German partners casting the matches in James Bond 007. The sister system doing an excellent job so far. Unfortunately, Razer being the first team so far, to the best of my knowledge, at least on this stream, to lose 100-0. So good showing by NC Dot, just completely locking out Razer and closing the match in about 6 minutes.
Yep, so with this Balgorn finally going down, we will be soon returning to the studio to see back the analysts, to Ithaca, in fact, who's taken over hosting from me for just a little bit at the beginning of this half. Wonderful to be back in the casting booth. Moderator, lovely to see you again, sir.
Yeah, good to see you too. It does not appear that the Balgorn we're seeing on field is a flagship, just a normal Tech 2 Balgorn, so that will not be the expensive kill mail that everyone in the stream has been hoping for, but it's a rather dominant performance by Northern Coalition. I'm really excited to see them be pushed a little bit more than they've been in this match and see if they can really be the team that we saw last year in Alliance Tournament 14. And as this Balgorn drops, we'll send it back to the analyst desk to break that one down for you.
We've got the Kings of Lowsec with Project Mayhem.
Welcome back, guys, to Alliance Tournament 15 here at the EVNT Studios. I am Ithaca Hawk. You will notice I am not a Pothny, unless I have aged 10 years and grown a beard, but I can confirm I am not a Pothny. The host with the most is taking a short break. He will be gracing your ears through our commentary booth for the next few matches, but in the meantime, I'm in the studio here with Suetonia and Brett Thomas. Guys, that was Northern Coalition there, just taking a chunk out of Razer Alliance. They found them. Break down that match for us. How did that go for them?
Well, NC Dot brought a 6 battlecruiser core, which looked really strong, with an Aneros. This is very similar to the Balgon core, except they've exchanged the Balgon for 2 more battlecruisers. And then with the last 4 ships, or 3 ships, including the Aneros, they've sort of just brought a bunch of weak support. And Razer brought a very weird setup with 3 battleships, and they were lost again.
Yeah, so taking 3 battleships takes a huge amount of your points into just a few ships. Brett, can you tell us what you think about that?
I think if you're going to go with 3 battleships, I think you have to go with something that does a little bit more reliable DPS than Vindicators, because while Vindicators are amazingly strong, they only do damage to stuff at close range. So if you go against this type of the type of team we saw Northern Coalition field with all the battlecruisers, when they spread out, these battleships just can't apply any damage. So I think they wasted that much points on something which wasn't that successful.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I hear we've got some graphs that we can show you now on screen. So the first one we're going to go for is the Logi breakdown so far in the tournament. Now, as you can see here, Aneros, by far the most popular Logi ship that we've seen, followed closely by a kind of an even mix of the Scimitar, the Basilisk, and then Deacons. Augur, Goonswarm bringing the Augur, a very interesting choice there, and finally Guardian at the bottom. So, Tony, why is the Aneros just so much more popular than all the rest of the Logi ships?
Now, the Aneros is the most flexible armor option. The Guardian is still strong, but the Guardian suffers from only having 2 mid slots, whereas the Aneros has 4 mid slots, so it's much easier to fit dual prop on the Aneros. It's much easier to fit multiple injectors. You can fit 3 small injectors, for example, plus MWD. You can also fit local sensor boosters on it too. It's also faster than the Guardian, which generally makes it a bit better, although the Guardian does have a bit more rep power at the expense of mobility and the expense of all that flexibility we talked about with the 4 mid slots.
Yeah. Now, Brett, I do believe you like to fly logistics in tournaments. You say that is your forte. Yeah. Can you maybe give us a breakdown between the Basilisk and the Scimitar? I mean, what would you choose in a situation?
When you bring the Basilisk and you bring the Scimitar, you balance it for 2 different things. It's mainly what you want to go for. The Basilisk The Basilisk is a lot less cap stable than a Scimitar. Whereas with a Scimitar, you can fit, say, like an AB or a micro warp drive. It does have less mid slots, so you have to commit to one of them, but you can fit it with a nice enough tank. Whereas a Basilisk, cap injected, has such high repping power, has such high tank, but it's vulnerable to if it gets caught out. So the big difference is all of them is what you want to bring. If you want to bring something a little bit more safer, a little bit more kitey, you go for a Scimitar. If you want to bring something a little bit tankier, semi-tinkerish, you go for the Basilisk.
Excellent. Now, we do have some really deep diving stats provided by Alexei upstairs. Now, we're going to go to another one. This one is going to be a breakdown of the tackle that has been chosen so far in the tournament. Now, Daredevil, we're seeing that being picked just way more than everybody else. Obviously, that's due to the 2-point pick for that ship. Hyena, the next one. Now, I mean, Tony, what do you make of these kind of numbers that we're seeing here?
They look pretty normal to me. Hyena is a very strong ship. It has the same web range as an Officer Balgon almost. So it's a good replacement for a Balgon. You can run Hyena Armageddon, which we've seen a few teams do instead of Balgon. And then you basically have a budget Balgon that doesn't require your flagship slot, which can work quite well. Hyena's always been a good ship at just tackling a Logi and holding it down with that target painter and web bonus, as well as it being very slippery. It's very hard to kill.
Yeah, I think we're definitely seeing a solid mix of long-range webs in the Hyena, in the Balgorn, and then the point-reduced Daredevil is just almost a no-brainer. If you've got like 2 or maybe even 4 points and you want to fit a couple of ships in, those 90% webs are very, very strong in this environment. Now, the next match we've got coming up is going to be Shadow Cartel versus Of Sound Mind. So, let's talk a little bit about that, shall we? Now, Shadow Cartel have been a couple of years ago, they were a very strong tournament team, finishing very high up in a couple of different ATs. Last year, maybe not as good as we expected. I mean, what happened there, Satonia?
Oh, I think there was a transition from the team because I believe Shadow Cartel used to be an EU-based team, then they swapped over to a more US-focused team, but it was different pilots. And they didn't do too well. I believe they got knocked out by a Band Apart, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you are.
They seem a bit stronger this year. They did look a bit shaky. They lost their first match in the feeder rounds, but they did make it through that bracket. And they did actually knock out a few good, decent teams, you know, surviving through that losers bracket, winning 3 games after losing the first.
Yeah, winning 3 games in the feeder rounds is definitely a solid performance. So I think maybe Shadow Cartel this year, if they've trained hard, they could definitely be putting on a very good performance. Now, they've got to go up against Of Sound Mind. Brett, how do you rank them?
I think Of Sound Mind are quite a good team. They've done well in the past. They've been in quite a few Alliance tournaments, and I think they have the potential to do quite well. They're not. They've not recently been like top 8 or top 4 competitors, but I think they have the potential to go somewhere if they've really practiced this year.
Excellent. Now, so Tony, we've got some time to fill here, so we're going to maybe talk about some of the matches that we've already seen today. Can you maybe tell me about what was your favourite match so far?
I really like the Goonswarm versus Brave match just because it's kind of a storied match, and I hope that Goonswarm would win because then they would, if they played again, they would play against the team that put them into they played against respectively, which would put them out of the feeder rounds, which could have been interesting. I think it was just a match that showed off like piloting and like we saw Tuskers fly the VNI drone comp very, very well. Then we saw Goons fly it and they didn't do so well with it. They were much closer to each other. They didn't make use of the micro jump drive beacons. I think it's just a good match to watch if you're someone who wants to get better and wants to improve on the mistakes that Goonswarm made.
Yeah, now you did mention there micro jump drive beacons. Now, if anyone is new to the tournament, they might not realise that in the arena there's a bunch of micro jump drive units. You can activate those and they will propel you 100 kilometres forward. Now, it is a bit of a risky move. You could maybe jump yourself out of the arena. It has been done. It probably will continue to be done. Brett, what do you think about using micro jump drives to escape, perhaps, if you're getting a lot of damage?
I think they've been used. I think they will be used quite a lot in this tournament with the drone comps being single target, and drones don't really swap that fast. So if a target micro jumps manages to get away, there's that huge 30-second travel time between each beacon for the drones to actually get back to the target. Of course, they could swap to something else, but if your team has starburst and sped out, instantly all the damage applied to you is null and void because you're 100 km away. They have to choose someone else or spend 40 seconds finally finishing you off, which is all the time that damage that your drone comps have or any comp you bring can apply to these drone comps, finish all the ships off, and very much win the match due to it.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a long way, as you say, for the drones to travel. So a lot of the good teams are making use of those. If they start to take a lot of damage, they jump out, and then the other team has to then swap or continue to let those drones travel. And you mentioned, again, starbursting. We saw that earlier on, a couple of the drone teams, like the Tuskers in the very first match, we saw them spreading out around the arena to mean that Red Alliance, they had to move from side to side, whereas Tuskers obviously out in a big ball, Red Alliance sitting in the middle, and that allowed Tuskers to apply maximum damage in a very convincing victory at the start of the day. Now, we have some... do we have some kill mails that we can show up right now? That would be perhaps good. I'm told we do not have kill mails right now. Now, Tonia, the reduction of points for the apprenticeships. That's a bit of a change this year from last year and the year before. Can you tell me what you think about that, just in general?
I think it's a pretty cool change that sort of changes the meta in different ways. That kind of makes you can still keep kind of a similar rule set. So new teams don't have to learn a new rule set every year, because that's a big problem. Is that understanding the AT rules is a big headache, especially if you're new to the tournament scene. While also just keeping that intricacy there, and it opens up a lot more options. For example, if we did a Sancha tournament the next year, you don't really see succubuses or phantasms in the tournament a lot, but if they're reduced by 2 points, succubuses are 2 points, suddenly they would be very viable picks. And it's interesting to see different ships and a meta evolving around those ships and what they bring.
Yeah, so Brett, the Vindicator reduced some points this year down to 20 points. Why then are we still seeing so many flagships chosen to be the Balgorn and not perhaps the Vindicator at a lower point value?
It's because the way the rules for flagships work is you get a lot more value for your money. You can do a lot more with a Balgorn compared to a Vindicator. You flagship a Vindicator, it gets a little bit more tank, and it can web to like 15 instead of 10 without links. So I think being able to flagship your Balgorn and getting, say, like officer newts and officer webs, being able to newt out to 40, 50 kilometers, being able to web the entirety of the arena gives you a lot more power compared to, say, a Vindicator's 90% webs at, say, 15, 16.
Yeah, so let's have a look at an example. So we do have a flag Balgorn kill mail from last year's Alliance tournament. I just want to stress this is not this year. Suleiman of the Tuskers has not lost his Balgorn this year, but this is what happened last year. Now you can see here where they've chosen to pimp it out with some officer webs. Now the Tobias web is the strongest web in the game. They're very expensive for that exact reason, but a Tobias web Balgorn can web any ship from the get-go. I believe it's around 62, 63 kilometer range. So you rub that in at 0 and you can web anything. It's a very powerful thing. Now they've also got, as you mentioned, Brett, they've got the officer neutralizers and a NOS there, as well as that long-range smart bomb. So this is a very expensive Balgorn. As you can see at the bottom there, almost 90 billion-esque. And I'm sure when we see our first really fully pimped out Balgorn go down this year, we'll probably exceed that. I do believe Toby webs have gone up in price. So Tonia, if you're going to take a flag Balgorn instead of your Vindicator, like what extra things is it going to bring to you? Does it do more damage at longer range, for example, or?
Oh, what the Balgorn does is it really amplifies everything else that you have on the team. Well, the Vindicator is more of just a ship that does everything by itself. It has a lot of damage. If you fit a Toby web on it, maybe you can get like 31 kilometers on it if you have links and heat, which is pretty powerful. But what the Balgorn really brings is being able to just dual web anything. You warp the Balgorn at 0. It's tanky enough to survive when you back it up with your Aneros or Guardian. And you can just web any ship that you want from the get-go. And often the Balgorn we see backed up by a lot of long-range DPS ships like stealth bombers and the quad BC cores that we've been seeing flying along with it. And you just dual web.
I'm going to have to interrupt you this, Tony, because we are ready to go to the arena now. So we do have, right now, coming up, Shadow Cartel versus Of Sound Mind. So we're going to throw that into the commentator booth and see how this one turns out.
Hey guys, and welcome back to Jove Space, where we have a cracker of a match coming